Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
It is 10:30 in Geelong. We are now crossing to South Australia, where the local time is 1978. Good morning to you, Dave. Barrowcliff in Port Lincoln or somewhere nearby there.
Good morning, boys, or gentlemen, I should say. Yes, lovely day over here in Port Lincoln.
Now, David, I spent 3 years living in South Australia, and one of the first things I learned...
He uses the word living very, very loosely.
Yes, is that the deep-seated hatred that South Australians have towards Victorians is embedded right through the culture, and it's got some humour to it, but it gets very, very nasty at times. Now, recent times, footy world in turmoil because of the old Connie virus, and it's caused by Victoria not doing the right thing. Have you just found another way to hate us?
Well, this stems back to now, of course, as you would know, I'm a Fitzroy supporter and then went on to be a Brisbane Lions supporter, but this stems right back to when the Adelaide Crows started, and I think you got your mob. They started Stone the Crows, so we bounced back with Kick a Vic. So it stemmed a long, long way back, I can tell you. And the old days of the state of origin football is. I remember the days of you'd get Sticks Kernahan coming back to play for South Australia, even though he was playing for Carlton, and the good old days. But I'd like to actually say that I think it was your mob that started it. And right through to your current Premier, who pretty much said, why would you want to go in? Well,
now listen, even I got a bit upset with that. That was crossing the line.
Yeah,
a little bit of backlash because everyone's trying to flee Victoria at the moment, and we don't want to let them in.
and it's one of the newspapers said today, Victorian teams are evacuating Victoria.
Exactly.
Seriously?
With the COVID-19, it's been very interesting because where we are, and even Adelaide, so to speak, you've got two sides of the country that were quite affected, which Victoria and New South Wales, of course, because that's where a lot of the overseas comes in. But as for the Eyre Peninsula, you could almost call us remote when it comes to the COVID-19 because pretty much there's only one way in and one way out. So
that's not the only reason you're remote. Yes, that's a very good reason. Not many roads.
Well, pretty much, yeah. There's one in from Victoria and one out to Western Australia, and if you don't like that, then, well, bad luck. But, very, very lucky over here. We're our local football comp has actually just started again today, so that's how well we've been doing.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So in a place like Port Lincoln, population, 15,000 or thereabout, something like that?
Yeah, 15,000, yep.
And we're now going to have you name them. No, we're not. So in terms of a place like that, the restrictions in your town, are they particularly stringent, or have they been eased right back? Like, for example, if you said this afternoon, I might go and watch the footy and then head down to the local for a drink, are you able to do that?
So I'm not 100% sure on how many they're going to let into the actual ground. But bearing in mind, when you're looking at like over in Victoria, where I think you're allowed to have, or say in Queensland, you can have 10,000 at the ground now, or something like that. Well, you wouldn't get 10,000 at the ground in Port Lincoln. There wouldn't be anyone left on the streets. So, but pretty much, I think maybe the restrictions might be that once your game's finished, you might be required to leave and then let the next grade play. But fantastic news for Port Lincoln because a place like the Eyre Peninsula, all the sport is pretty much the whole community's always wrapped around sport every weekend through 52 weeks of the year. So, but our restrictions, well, I think the biggest restriction we had was Coles wouldn't let anyone bar pensioners in between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning. That's about it.
Yeah.
The footy competition, I imagine, would be spread over quite a distance. Give us an idea of the clubs that play in the comp over there.
So we have a 6-team comp. This year there's actually only 5 teams because a team called Mallee Park have decided to not participate this year.
Is that due to the issues outside of coronavirus or just because of coronavirus?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure whether it's actually because of finances, because so I couldn't actually give you the 100% reason on it. So they've opted not to play, and quite a few of their players have actually dispersed between the other clubs. Not to mention that throughout the countryside up towards Ceduna, those comps aren't continuing either. So quite a lot of footballers have come down to play in our league. So there's actually a glutton of players. Like it's not a walking stand-up to play even in the B grade now, because pretty much the A and B grade are going to be A grade sides throughout the season.
For the Victorians listening, that's the seconds.
Yeah.
The Rezzies.
Stobie pole, telegraph pole, etc., etc.
Yes, the budget.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So it's going to be interesting times. Just happy to have sport back. But it's, like I say, as far as the COVID-19, I mean, the biggest problem I had was having my own business is in the automotive game is everyone got told to stay home. So 4 or 5 weeks later, when you were allowed to actually go out, no one had broken their windscreen. So of course we had a downturn of income slightly for a little while.
anyone that had a broken windscreen, they were coming around to your place looking for your hammer.
Maybe I was walking around with a hammer, but anyway, that's another story.
Our previous guest, David Parkin, touched on the importance in the Australian culture of Australian rules footy, but never more so than in a small country town, and that's right across Australia. It's sort of the hub of the whole community during the winter months, isn't it?
It certainly is. So when the cricket season stops, then people are then straight into the, they're already doing pre-season pretty much, even though small towns don't do a lot of pre-season, but the pre-season starts as the cricket season is finishing. So, so very much and also a revenue-raising point too, because, we're not talking millions of dollars, tens of thousands, but just the gatekeeping is to go through that, and the stalls with the hot dogs and the pies and all that. It's all relative to the size of the competitions and does help the clubs out.
Now, your personal brand has been elevated somewhat since you joined forces with GoRadio.live, and you've now heading into politics. How's that working for you?
Pretty good. So last year we had, unfortunately, a local councillor. Now we're talking District Council of Lower Eyre Peninsula, because I do live out of town in a different district, even though I have a business in Port Lincoln. So we had a local councillor that actually had a heart attack, unfortunately, and died. And so we had a supplementary election, which I was, like the mainstream normal people, I would say, used to think council were not doing their job, not very good, and I reckon I could do better. So I ran in the election and was lucky enough to get voted in. And
then went, oh my God, what am I going to do now?
Well, it's been very interesting, Rob. I'm actually enjoying it. It's a lot different than I thought, and local government is very much hamstrung by its parents, as I call them, the state government, who are then hamstrung by their parents, which is federal government.
Yep.
And then they, of course, are then hamstrung by the rest of the world. So it's a lot different than I thought it would be, but I'm making little impacts on the little things that are important to ratepayers. So while as a council we do have to look at the bigger picture of waste management systems and stuff like that, there are all those little things that people like to see done, like a simple pothole that's been around.
It is the pothole. It's the go-to for important council matters is the pothole on me road. It's driving me crazy.
Yep, exactly. And so little things like that, which is quite easy to be overlooked on a constant basis by all sort of governments. So that was one of the main things I wanted to go in there and go through the register to see what hasn't been done, and we're successfully going forward.
The other funny thing is that some people, when you are elected to council, believe that you are the man with the wheelbarrow and the shovel that does the filling of the pothole. Did you get many irate in the street that have a crack at you?
No, well, it's actually quite interesting, Rob, because I actually, when I was running in the election, and we did have a major issue in our district with something that was going on that the ratepayers majority were against, and in the end, it wasn't the ratepayers that prevented it from happening. It was the choice of something that went forward in a different direction. And it wasn't even the council's fault what was actually going on at the time. But I said to everyone, if you vote me in, then feel free, send me an email. If you send me an email, there'll be some sort of action taken, whether it be what you want or don't want, or even some sort of clarification on an issue. Haven't had too many.
Yeah, that's because you gave out the wrong email address. Can you explain why I've now got 14,000 emails in my inbox saying, can you tell me why there's a pothole in my street in Port Lincoln? You gave them my email address by mistake. And last time you and I had a chat off air, there was an issue around flights coming in and out of your town. Is that been restored, the air traffic?
As in our airport, so we're still on the restrictions, and still once again it's up to the carriers that come into Port Lincoln on how many flights. So our flights have definitely increased. They're not back to pretty much maximum flights of what we did have, which I think is about 5 a week off the top of my head. So we're nowhere near that those numbers yet. But and of course, what people don't realise is an airport isn't simply just a place that you go, you jump in a plane. An airport is a business, and a business needs to be sustainable to continue on being a business. So a lot of people wouldn't realise that when the planes aren't flying, every time a plane lands, of course, the airport is given money by the carrier, and that's how an airport survives. So it's been tough times. So the Port Lincoln Airport is actually owned by the District Council of Lower Eyre Peninsula, which sounds a little bit funny. So it's been interesting times, but hopefully we can get back on track. I'm not sure how airlines are actually going to bounce back, in what direction. They might go do a complete backflip and go in regional towns and just say, these are our flights and that's it, or whether they might listen to the community and the councils and run with our ideas. So interesting times.
We don't want airlines doing backflips. That's the last thing we need.
Well, exactly.
Business terminology, dead cat bounce. Hopefully it's better than that.
Hey, mate, we better wind this conversation up. We've got someone else we need to chat to before 11 o'clock, 10:30 your time. So thanks for joining us at late notice. Always good to have a chat. We'll no doubt have you back and have a segment of Three Blokes Chatting again at some stage.
Yep, absolutely fantastic.
And we're jealous because you've got footy.
An interesting fact that, or Neil, not a fact, but imagine if we got over the line in '88 in the prelim final, things might have been a little bit different.
They might have indeed. I think it was 86, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry, 86. My mistake.
Yeah, that's all good. No, in 88, I think we're...
First year, 88 was David Parker's last year.
That's it, exactly it. There he is, Dave Barrowcliff, over in Barrowcliff, in fact, over in Port Lincoln. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Good on you guys.
See you, buddy.
There he is.